Welcome to the Draft Report presented by DFSReport.com. My name is Matt Brown, coming to you week 3 NFL. Going to talk some quarterbacks here. After a couple of disappointing performances last week by some big-name quarterbacks, hopefully we get a bounce-back performance here from some of these guys. Starting at the top, Aaron Rodgers going up against Cincinnati. Cincinnati been absolutely dreadful, woeful this entire season. Certainly a guy we're going to be looking to target this week. One of my favorite guys, actually, that might slip to you, especially in the later rounds of a draft, if you're doing a big multi-team draft, is Matthew Stafford going up against Atlanta this week at home. I really like what this Detroit offense is doing so far. I think they took their foot off the gas a little bit on Monday night. Another thing about Matt Stafford here is if you believe in this Atlanta offense, you have to think there's going to be some points being scored, and that's going to force Matthew Stafford to take to the air early and often. Certainly find myself landing on Matthew Stafford in a ton of my drafts so far. Just mentioned Matt Ryan, obviously got to like the other side of the ball in that game. Another game that I'm really targeting here, Kirk Cousins going up against Oakland, and of course, Derek Carr on the other side of the ball there. Kirk Cousins hasn't looked extremely sharp through the first couple of weeks and even dating back into preseason. That being said, I think they finally started to get it together last week. Terrell Pryor's even come out and said that this is going to be the week. This is the week that he finally goes off here. I think that Oakland has one of the best, if not, a top 3 offense in this entire league. I expect points in this game a lot as well. Therefore, definitely looking at Kirk Cousins and looking at Derek Carr. One of the guys that I'm going to be fading despite the matchup is Cam Newton. Cam Newton has not looked right to me. If you've seen any of these games so far, very inaccurate, not really running the ball. I wonder if he's still injured and basically just not coming out and saying how injured he actually is. I mean, right there at the end of the game last week, had Christian McCaffrey wide open for a touchdown that would have iced the game. He ended up overthrowing him by 3 or 4, maybe even 5 or 6 feet over McCaffrey's head. Just absolutely horrible. And the throw was basic. I mean, the guy was wide open. Just about anybody makes that throw. So Cam Newton, certainly a guy I'm going to be looking away from this week. On the other side of the ball there, Drew Brees, we're talking about going outdoors. Obviously, traditionally has played much, much better inside the confines of the Superdome. And this Panthers defense is legit as well. So Drew Brees is another guy that I think I'm going to lay off of this week. Would rather have a Rodgers, Stafford, Ryan, Cousins, Carr, certainly in those areas. Would certainly like to have any of those guys over him. Another guy I'm going to be fading is Russell Wilson this week. I mean, listen, on the road at Tennessee, and Russell Wilson and that offensive line is absolutely pathetic. And listen, I think there's a decent chance that Russell Wilson's only average. I mean, I know that we kind of blew it up there for a while that he was going to be the next big thing. And yes, the offensive line plays a lot of that role, and he has certainly not looked as well because of that. But I think that, he misses a lot of passes when he does have time, and he's really inaccurate here over the last couple of seasons, actually. So definitely a guy I'm going to be looking away from is there. To round out the quarterback plays I will be considering, depending on how far they fall to me in the draft. I'm looking at Carson Wentz. I think he is for real. I think this Giants team might just give up. I mean, this has been absolutely horrible. You got Ben McAdoo coming after his quarterback and Eli Manning, and it just looks like a team that's going to be absolutely pathetic. So for me, really like Carson Wentz. In that situation, of course, Ben Roethlisberger going to Chicago. Now, the Chicago, actually, I feel like their run defense is going to be pretty good this year, which is going to make Ben Roethlisberger have to go to the air in this game. So I think Ben Roethlisberger is finally in line to have a big game there. Looking at the running back plays here in week 3, of course, the top of the list, and basically every single week is going to be Le'Veon Bell. He had an absolute dud in week 1. Didn't really light the world on fire in week 2, but you got to love the volume. 27 carries in that game, played on 90% of the snaps. This is exactly what we want to see from Le'Veon Bell. Now, I just mentioned that I think in the quarterback segment that I think the Bears have a pretty decent run defense, but we all know what Le'Veon Bell can do out of the backfield. We saw games with double-digit catches last year, and I expect to see him being a part of this pass game this week as well. Love Le'Veon Bell, and hopefully there'll be some people out there who are going to go with the recency bias and think that he's not good and he's not doing well this year. And I'll buy into Le'Veon Bell being Le'Veon Bell. So sign me up early and often for Le'Veon Bell. Kareem Hunt this week at the Chargers. I actually think the Chargers are going to show up in this game. I think they're going to play well, But the way that they're using Kareem Hunt and the volume that Kareem Hunt is getting has to basically put him on your radar as one of the top draft picks here, at least for the foreseeable future, until we see some sort of shift in role or hopefully no injury or anything like that. But Kareem Hunt, certainly a guy that has got to be right up there with Le'Veon Bell week in, week out now, as a guy that's basically a 3-down back, catches passes, and also gets a ton of volume. So certainly going to love him as well. One of the guys maybe I'll be a little less high on this week is Melvin Gordon. I actually think that they are going to go to the air in this game. With the Chargers are going to go to the air in this game against the Chiefs. Now, Melvin Gordon has been playing 3 downs and salvaged his week last week actually through his passing game because did not have a good rushing game whatsoever. I do think that will change. I think he'll at least have some success, but I think for me, much rather have Bell, much rather have Hunt, and maybe just wait a little bit on my running back picks in my drafts. Jay Ajayi showed up on the injury report, which was kind of weird. I think he's probable to play anyway, though, now. Going up against this Jets team that lost their best run defender, and frankly, we all know that they're tanking on the season. I expect the Dolphins to score a lot of points in this game. I think Jay Ajayi is certainly a guy that I would almost rather have over Melvin Gordon this week. But again, watch the injury report in case something flares up again towards the end of the week. We don't want to take any chances there. LaShawn McCoy, total pass this week for me. This Denver defense is legit. I mean, absolutely legit. I don't care that they are going on the road to Buffalo here. This defense is going to show up. And here's the thing. They're not going to be able to pass the ball. And you can't go the no-fly zone there in Denver. No way they're going to be able to pass the ball. So what are they going to do? Are they going to run it? I mean, this is the same defense in Denver that just shut down Ezekiel Elliott just last week. And so LaShawn McCoy, with absolutely no chance of this defense worrying about getting beaten through the air, I think LaShawn McCoy gets bottled up this week pretty badly. Ty Montgomery is a guy, though, I am high on this week in this game against Cincinnati. Obviously, if I like Aaron Rodgers, I'm going to like a lot of the people around him. Ty Montgomery, just the volume and the pass catching and everything that he brings to the table. Got to love him. We talked about that shootout in Atlanta, Detroit. So obviously Devontae Freeman has to be on your list, and actually is pretty high on my list. Might be actually slated right behind Le'Veon Bell and Kareem Hunt for me this week as guys that I'm going to be targeting. C.J. Anderson heading over there to Buffalo. Buffalo's defense is actually fairly good. They're pretty legit here. So for me, C.J. Anderson, even after 2 big weeks, is going to be a guy that I won't be looking to draft. Of course, if he falls to me at a certain place, if I'm in a big league, sure, I'll take but I'm certainly not a guy that I'm going to be targeting high on in my drafts. One of the guys that, listen, it's going to happen sooner or later. There's going to be a breakout Christian McCaffrey game. And while I don't think Cam Newton is going to have a big game himself, that doesn't mean Christian McCaffrey can't. I mean, listen, he's getting the bulk of the carries. He's playing the majority of the snaps over the other running backs there. And he is the big receiving threat for that team out of the backfield. It's going to happen. If it's ever going to happen, the New Orleans Saints would be a great team to make it happen against, because this defense is an all-timer when it comes to being bad. So listen, Christian McCaffrey is a guy I think you can feel pretty confident about this week. One of the other backfields I'm totally avoiding is that Saints backfield. Now, listen, we like the Saints offense in general and usually every week. Three-headed monster is something I just try to avoid, and I don't think they know what they want to do with this backfield just yet. I think we might start to see some clarity this week. Maybe it's Alvin Kamara finally starts to just take over the role solely there. But until we figure that out, not anyone that I'm going to be targeting. Another one of these guys to end this running back segment here, James White in New England, playing all the snaps, getting all the targets there. This is something we really, really love. I don't care that he's going up against Houston, because this is a volume play here against a team that we know is going to score points. The New England Patriots are going to score points at will this entire season, it seems like. So for me, James White is an under-the-radar guy that I think you can get at a value real late in the draft that might make all the difference for you this week. Going to talk some wide receivers here for week 3. Antonio Brown, A.J. Green, Julio Jones, Mike Evans. What do we think about all these really big-name guys right here? Antonio Brown heading to Chicago. Like I said, I think that the Steelers are going to attack through the air. Love Antonio Brown this week. A.J. Green, been a bit of a disappointment, to say the least, because this Bengals offense hasn't scored a touchdown so far this season. That's going to change. This is going to be the week that they finally get in the end zone. I like A.J. Green a lot. And listen, there's going to be people off of him. The A.J. Green might see very sparse ownership because people don't want anything to do with Andy Dalton and, that pop gun arm of his. I will say this. I think A.J. Green bounces back this week. Going to have a big game here. Julio Jones at Detroit, talked about this already. Going to see a lot of fireworks, going to see a lot of scoring in that game. Could we see a Julio eruption? I think it's definitely possible here. Certainly a guy that I'm going to be taking before any wide receiver this week if I'm able to, depending on where I am in the draft. Odell Beckham, a complete fade for me. Go ahead and let everyone else draft Odell Beckham. He's not fully healthy. They have no run game to speak of, so they can basically just lock in on him. We thought Brandon Marshall would help him out. We thought he might get more space because people would care about Brandon Marshall, but he looks old, isn't catching the ball. And on top of that, Eli Manning looks old. Not being able to get these guys the ball on a consistent basis. That offensive line is absolutely terrible, so he's running for his life as well. Odell Beckham, a complete fade for me. Mike Evans in Minnesota. This Minnesota team is good. The thing about Mike Evans is Mike Evans' volume every single week is just so incredibly high. And so while I don't think this is an eruption spot for Mike Evans, it's a volume play alone because Jameis Winston loves to target his big wide receiver. Jordy Nelson in that game, the Packers and the Bengals. Now listen, Jordy Nelson only able to run a couple of routes this past week and came out of the game. Then oddly enough, when everyone thought he was going to be out for sure, as we sit here on Wednesday, he went ahead and put in a full practice and came out and said he would, as far as he's concerned, he's going to play this week. A bit of a risky option, but sometimes these risks have high rewards. So if you are one of the guys that are okay to taking a gamble, Jordy Nelson can pay off very, very big if he is in fact not injured in a game that could definitely turn into a shootout there in Green Bay. Keenan Allen for the Chargers. This is a guy just week in, week out. If you want to talk about a guy with a super high floor, I mean, the floor for Keenan Allen is so ridiculously high. He gets so many targets, runs so many precision routes, just gets open in basically every facet of the game, and Phillip Rivers loves to throw to him. So while the ceiling might be a tad bit limited because there are other people that they look to in the red zone to score touchdowns, I do believe Keenan Allen's a very high floor and does have at least somewhat of a ceiling. Keenan Allen's a guy that if he's there for me at the right spot, basically every single week I take him. I mean, and it's paid off so far. I expect it to continue to pay off. Another guy who's disappointed a lot has been Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper has basically taken a back seat to Michael Crabtree in weeks 1 and 2 here. That is not going to be the case, however, every week, but that's one of the things that we can count on is it's going to be either or. So if you like the Oakland offense, I suggest maybe entering 2 drafts and be sure to get Amari Cooper in one and get Michael Crabtree in the other. It seems like it's going to be one or the other guy each and every single week. And one of those weeks, it's going to be Amari Cooper. Why not this week? And we're talking about a game there in Washington that we think is definitely primed to score a lot of points. What do you think about this Denver offense here? I mean, Trevor Siemian actually looking like he can play quarterback in the NFL, and he's been peppering his wide receivers, as he should, with tons of targets. We talked about Buffalo. I think this team is basically in tank mode. I think they're looking to finish with the second worst record behind the Jets in the entire league, so they can get a super high draft pick here, traded away all their talent. I think this team is basically I think they started to tank before the season even started, to be perfectly honest here. I think Denver shows up. I think Denver has a very good game. And I think you could not go wrong with Demaryius Thomas or Emmanuel Sanders. A couple of other guys I do want to mention here. Stephon Diggs is going to be a fade for me if Sam Bradford doesn't play. I love Stephon Diggs as a whole. I think he's a really, really great player. That being said, we saw what happened when Sam Bradford was on the sideline last week in case Keenum had to take over. It was not good. It was very ugly. Stephon Diggs had a very pedestrian, mediocre game. So if Sam Bradford's on the sidelines this week, so you're going to have to watch the injury report, see how this plays out, I'm going to be off of Stephon Diggs. And finally, Alshon Jeffrey. If I love the Eagles this week, if I think that Carson Wentz is going to show up, I think he's going to play super well. Obviously, I've got to love me some Alshon Jeffrey. So give me tons and tons of Alshon Jeffrey. And of course, we're fading all Colts until further notice because that team is in complete disarray. And finally, the tight end position. Again, as we talked about last week on the podcast, not going to roster tight ends too often on draft. You only have to have 2 pass catchers, and a lot of times those are going to be wide receivers because the upside is much, much higher. That said, We said if there was ever a week to roster Gronk, it would be last week, and he had every bit the upside as a wide receiver. Hopefully you took that advice because Gronk went off, certainly could have won you your drafts that week. So really each and every week, there's only going to be a handful, if not a couple, of tight ends that actually could be in play, that actually have some sort of upside. This week, I'm looking at Travis Kelce, and this is a guy that we saw last week finally. One of the things last year that we were so frustrated with is that he just wasn't getting the volume to fully take advantage of the athletic ability that he possesses. Finally got the volume last week. You saw this crazy diving helicopter spin touchdown into the end zone and everything like that. I think Travis Kelce is one of those guys that we could actually look to in a draft and say, this guy has legit 9-catch, over 100-yard, and a touchdown upside here. I think Travis Kelce should be on your radar. Zach Ertz this week is another guy. Listen, Carson Wentz loves Zach Ertz. He loves to look his way, and he does it early and often. He's the number 2 guy there. It's not Nelson Aguilar. It is definitely Zach Ertz. If we think Philadelphia is going to go off this week against the Giants, you could certainly differentiate yourself by drafting a guy like Zach Ertz. And again, in Washington, look, we have to monitor the injury report again with Jordan Reed. Basically, that's a broken record every single week, every single year. That said, we certainly need to keep him. If he's going to play, he needs to at least be on the table here in a game that we think could be a shootout with this Raiders team. And we know what Jordan Reed can do when Kirk Cousins looks his way. I mean, he does get the volume and he gets the red zone looks most importantly. So again, keep an eye on Jordan Reed, possibly a guy that we could look to this week. That's the guys we're going to be considering this week for our drafts over at Draft App. Guys, download it from the App Store. Use the sign-up bonus code REPORT, REPORT. And with that, you will get a free contest entry upon your first deposit. So again, REPORT, REPORT, whenever you sign up there. Good luck. Hopefully we will talk next week about all the money and all the contests we want.